Hello and welcome to another episode of It's Good to Talk. We are your hosts. I am Marcia, inspirational speaker, author, mentor, and mother.
And I am your co-host, Kai, speaker, author, and entrepreneur.
So today we want to talk a little bit about, is self-love selfish? This has been something that I've definitely feel very passionate about, and have had multiple conversations with clients, with friends, with significant others, and I think it's definitely one that requires a lot of open thinking. So obviously we've just recently had the social day of love, Valentine's Day, and it always brings up a lot of stuff for me because I just generally feel like I don't see why we have to have a specific day to express love of self and love to others. And I don't think there should be a specific day set aside for that. Not to bash anyone that does want to use it as an opportunity to show love, but I think I'm really an advocate of self-love is the best love. And until you really truly understand love of self, I'm not really convinced you can accept or give love to anyone else.
Absolutely. I think, I'm not against Valentine's Day at all, anyone wanting to have any specific day for celebrations, because I think
No.
this is the same for all of the commercial holidays. People are like, why do we have to have a day to show this and a day to show that? I don't think we need to have a day to show it, but the fact that there is one, I think just highlights and elevates it, just like there is with most months or weeks or days of awareness. It just sheds light. However, for sure, it's something that you should be actively doing, not just a spontaneous act that you don't do for the rest of the year, because what is that? It's not consistent, and it's not productive to kind of just do it that way. So if you find yourself in those kind of situations, which I unfortunately have previously been in, then you kind of have to look and think, what is the reason behind this? Especially if you're in a relationship with someone who only wants to have this public display on this so-called special day. It could even be a birthday or any other time of the year,
Right.
Christmas, etc. But the rest of the year, you're treating me like I don't exist. So yeah, hopefully, you're watching and listening and not going through that. But I think that's one of the balances you've got to kind of make sure that you have. What's like these kind of occasions been like for you in general, growing up, and obviously in past relationships, family settings and things? Have you celebrated them in some way, shape, or form because of the relationship or because of the kids, or have you always been this way?
No, I think I definitely grew up in the era where you read about Prince Charming, and kind of he was just going to come along and save you, and so you kind of aspire to that this person is going to come into your life and make your world a better place. So I definitely know that somewhere along the line I was searching for my happiness and my requirement of love in somebody else. And so, yeah, of course, over the years, I've celebrated Valentine's and done various things. But what I understand now, after having therapy and kind of going in and looking at myself, that I was extremely codependent, and codependency is it's a relationship addiction, is how I would describe it. It's a learned behavior. So you find yourself in scenarios where you're emotionally dependent. And could even find yourself in abusive situations, because that desire, it's one-sided. You need that, and so this is where I kind of understand now the value of loving self, because so it's not that you won't love your significant other, but rather you see yourself as a whole person on your own, and they are a whole person on their own, and then you come together, and of course it's great because you further are more of a powerhouse, because you bring both bringing things to the table, but you're not You're not searching for completion from that person.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think there's so much in society, you know, films growing up, songs. I'm a massive R&B fan, so there's so much of that, you know, sort of 80s, 90s, and even 2000 era, where the songs and everything, you're just like, yeah, like I'm gonna find this person, it's gonna be this thing, and that's great because if you do find that person that does that for you, amazing. But I think there's the flip side of it, that being single, if you're a guy, there's a certain type of lifestyle, like this bachelor that's painted, and it's like you're supposed to go out and be this way. And if you're a female and you want to go out and have a similar sort of lifestyle or any kind of other lifestyle, it's kind of like you're scolded for being single, like you can't find a man or this or that. So I've definitely, I mean, I'm not in that space now, and I haven't been for a long time because I'm very comfortable being on my own, especially when I've been in those situations where I can't breathe. And so you break up with the person or whatever happens, and you're like, well, I've previously been like, phew, like what a relief. Like being on my own is so much more fun, and you don't have anyone to answer to, and the arguing and all those kind of things. So it's weird because I remember before when I had broken up with this, well, this has happened on more than one occasion, but I'd broken up with someone and I couldn't tell my friends how I felt because it was sort of deemed like, would you mean you're happier by yourself?
Yeah, and
like,
I'm glad you've said
with
that.
him. You need to call him and make it up. You know what I mean?
I'm glad you've said that, because I think, you know, this is something I definitely encourage, you know, attachment empowerment. So kind of understanding that it's okay. It's okay for, you know, society says it's not okay for, I don't know, a woman to go and sit in a cafe by herself and drink a cup of tea and be happy doing that. Like, it's okay to do those things. It's okay if you feel you want to go and buy yourself a bottle of champagne and you want to celebrate you. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And, you know, for all the listeners out there,
who said she goes on dates by herself.
With herself, and this is something 100%. I really would encourage that, and not just for women, for men too. You know, it's about empowering you to love yourself, to be comfortable with yourself, to not feel that, oh, I can only be happy because of somebody else. Because honestly, once you do arrive at that point where you see the value of yourself, I believe naturally you will begin to attract the things that you desire, the people that you desire into your life, because you won't actually, and I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I know I have accepted relationships that maybe they were not serving me because I thought that's what I deserved. I didn't know my value. I didn't really celebrate me. So I was defined by, you know, maybe who I was with, or I kind of accepted things that maybe I definitely shouldn't have, but because I didn't understand myself.
I can definitely relate to that because you know, growing up, there was so many instances where I had this ongoing story in my head where I would like a guy, and this could be at school, university, and even later. So I'd like a guy, and the guy may not necessarily like me back and reciprocate. But the biggest story that was going on in my head was that I was not good enough. And like I was here and the guy was up here, and I wasn't, how dare I even try to reach? It wasn't the beginning story, but I think as time went on and you like one guy for 6 months to a year and you have another crush and so forth, I just think as time went on, I would just kind of hide and shrink myself because you think they're never going to like me. How would they like me? I'm just little old me. So that story then became even bigger when other guys might like me. So I'm not dating anyone and this guy doesn't like me back, but another one comes into the picture, and friends quite encouragingly would say, babe, like, why don't you just go on a date? This was sort of more university time, obviously, because I didn't really date during university, to be honest, but they would, try to encourage and say, just, he's a nice guy. See how it
Mm.
goes. You know, one day it wouldn't hurt. Come on, he's going to take you out and stuff. So you think, okay, you know, it's not too bad. But then actually, if anything went further and you go on a second date and a third date, and you start to get the ick feeling, which we call it now, but I would just literally be cringing inside thinking, I don't want this guy to kiss me. I don't want this guy to, I don't want him
Right.
to fall for me because I know that
Well,
I
because
don't feel the same.
that connection's not there.
Exactly. And then I felt like I couldn't be vocal because if I would say this to my friend, it would also be like, well, you're ungrateful, or I mean, this is not necessarily what they said, but I feared
No.
their responses in the sense
Right.
of, you know, yeah, but babe, he's all right. You know, he drives this car and he's got this thing and he's studying this. Like, so then you kind of think, well, maybe I am being ungrateful. And it's just this ongoing, very, very exhausting story that I used to tell myself. So, you know, I've definitely grown massively since then. And I know that is not the case. And I think after going through enough of those scenarios where I'm just like, please God, let this be over, um, I just realized it is way more refreshing to be alone, especially when I was in a relationship with someone who they were a nice guy. And I'm like, you know what? You need to go and find the girl that's going to make you super happy because
Right.
you deserve that. And I need to find me, or I need to find the person that I really want to be with and I deserve to be with as well. We don't need to be here
100%.
arguing and bickering and making each other miserable because that's not what it's about. And I don't want to feel like, you know, a bitch every time that I'm just like, they're irritating me, but it's that irritating feeling because I
Yeah,
know
because you've accepted something that, and it's
I'm
that of
just,
fear,
yeah,
isn't it? It's that
I'm not in
fear
it.
of, I don't want to be alone. So something is better than nothing. And as you said, but potentially when we do that, we're actually blocking ourselves from the person maybe that we're supposed to be with. And you
Absolutely.
found yourself in this scenario. And so I would really just say to anyone out there that, you know, being comfortable on your own and not getting into unions or relationships or partnerships because you're scared of being on, you're fearful of being alone, um,
Mm,
because you've got to have faith that there is somebody
mm,
out there for you and you are worthy of that relationship, and to stop settling for less than you deserve. And I know we've all
mm,
done it.
mm,
And as you've said, you know, kind of just talking about that self-worth and knowing that you actually are worthy of good things. It's a process. Finding the right person can take years.
mm, mm.
Years.
And I
Um,
think that's, you know, so many factors contribute to that because you might already know it and feel it. But what I definitely battled with is, you know, peer pressure. It was,
of
you know, a
course.
lot of the external factors that are pretty much against that because it's like, oh, you know, you're single. Okay. Oh, you're happy being alone. But what does that mean? And then you have these, you know, with guys, you know, wanting to have debates about relationships or even females having debates about relationships. And I don't want to have to justify or explain every
Your
time that I'm in a
status,
certain
right?
status. Exactly. Or defend like the reasons why it's okay to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
single. And
It just
obviously at
is.
times you just don't talk about it, you know. But you know, it's a process. And obviously now I'm very aware it's thankfully a lot more of a talking point and an open discussion with many people who
Yep.
know they need to spend more time alone, a lot more people who know that it's about self-worth, a lot more, you know, so it's a much easier conversation to have if you choose to have it now. um, but even just talking about being with somebody because of the fear of being alone, who do you have that conversation with? You know, sometimes you don't even know you're doing it
No, of
until
course
much
not.
later and you're like,
Yeah, you in
damn.
hindsight. Hindsight. I mean, us having this conversation now, you know, it's obviously triggering things, and you think, God, that's actually what I did. But of course, at the time,
Yeah.
you're just going along with things. And I do think, I don't know for your generation, but I definitely feel in mine there was a lot of pressure to, you just get married and you just be in a
Mm.
situation, you have kids, and that's what you do. And if you
And he's
don't
going
do
to take
it,
care of you. Yeah, come
something's
on.
wrong.
He's got a good
Right.
job. Could take care of you. What more do you want?
Right. And so you can imagine then, societally, you've already got an image in your mind of how it should be. So if it doesn't fit that, you now start emasculating the man because he's not doing what you thought he should be doing based on what society says.
What a real man does. Yeah.
Right. So I know there's a lot of brothers out there who feel failed because they feel that they haven't fulfilled those needs. But we're here to tell you that, you are independent and strong in your own right. And we celebrate you too. So, just, it's okay. It's okay. We don't have to, I think a lot of us are challenging the status quo now, and we're, looking at a lot of the things we were taught that were the way. It's not necessarily the way. And we have to find our own way and what works for us. And so I think it is important that, when you do meet that person, that you feel the connection. It's not about what everybody else thinks, is it?
Well, I know, a few people who have vocalized now that they were in long-term relationships or 5, 10, 15, 20 years, but they were never actually in love, or they've never experienced love at, the point that they are now. And again, everyone's experience and relationship and marriage is different. But I think as a single person, or even somebody looking for this magic key or this romance, my assumption would have been that you must have been in love if you were in that relationship for however long it was, and it didn't break down immediately if that wasn't the case. And they would, of course, say no, that was quite the contrary. You just got on with it, And so I personally now know the difference between being alone and being lonely, because I, of course, have chosen to be alone on many occasions. But I just wonder how that would have been for some other people who felt it would have been okay to be alone back then. And is it even so bad to admit that you may have been lonely instead of waiting as long as they had to even have that? It's kind of almost like being lonely is a swear word as such. No one wants to say I'm lonely.
No.
And I think we often flitter between the two. There's times where I am lonely,
of course,
because I want company. And there's times where I'm very clear I'm not leaving my house and I want to be alone. Not because I feel bad or anything, but because I'm in my own space and I don't want anyone coming to mess with my energy. And I'm just like, I'm good, especially after a certain time. Most days, don't try to call my phone after this and whatever. But I'm comfortable and very clear now. But I wouldn't say it saddens me, but I just think it's an intriguing and interesting conversation to even talk about loneliness, because I don't really see or hear people talking about loneliness ever. No, and there is a huge difference.
I think it's still quite taboo to admit that, because it's like almost if you've said, I choose to be alone, then it's like you shouldn't then admit, because you choose to be alone doesn't mean that you don't desire company at times. And so, as you said, I think people are just not necessarily open to sharing that, but it is lonely. And that's the danger when you start to feel lonely, that you might engage in things that are not necessarily going to serve you. And so I think
that's true, even in love, actually, in relationships. I think even in business, entrepreneurship can be a very lonely journey, but it doesn't mean that you go and work with any and everyone, or you just spend a day working wherever, because it can be a distracting day versus a productive day if you do that. So,
and I think having the awareness is key. So we're not saying that because you know the difference now, you're all right, Jack. No, you're aware. So you will feel if you're doing something maybe not for the right reasons. So you might pull yourself
I think sometimes
back.
that makes it even harder,
Yeah, well, of course. I mean, I get distracted all the time. So I will have a list of things to do and I've chosen to be alone. But then I'm looking distraction. in my choice. I'm
Yeah.
looking distraction, yeah, and I'm quite happy to pick up. And then I might be on the phone talking to someone, but think this is not the best use of my time. Actually, I've got X, Y, and Z to do, but I'm here being distracted, and then I'm annoyed with myself.
Yeah,
for not setting those boundaries. But yeah, we all have lonely days, and I think even when you are in the right job, or you're running the right business, or you're in the right partnership, you still have days where you may feel alone. So it is something I think we need to be talking about more.
Yeah, and I think it's just that balance. You said awareness for sure. When you're aware, sometimes it's harder to make the choice because you know now. When you don't know, you could, cry ignorance, and ignorance is bliss. But when you do actually know and you are aware, for me, I think I call my granddad, not just because I feel whatever, but I obviously live in a different country, and I just want to see how he's doing and make sure that he's, got company. He's 99 years old at the time of this conversation, and sometimes, no matter whatever I'm going through, I know that my granddad has been through a hell of a lot, raised a whole family. He has, succeeded many family members, unfortunately, and he's still alive and kicking. So I call him sometimes and I think, do you know what, even if I feel lonely on that particular day, I know that he has seen and done and conquered so much, and the joy in his voice, the joy in my voice, just speaking to each other. It literally is a 2-minute phone call sometimes because he doesn't stay on the phone very long.
No. Sounds like someone on
but it's just what both of us needed, and generally sometimes I'm just calling to say hey, and he often is like, "Where are you?" And I'm like, "Granddad, I'm in Dubai." He thinks I'm in London sometimes, but no, I just pick up the phone and I say hello. So I think it's having that balance and knowing, okay, am I being codependent right now? Am I just looking for a distraction? And if the answer is yes, then structuring that time to say, okay, maybe I just need a short break and then I need to go back to what I was doing. Or maybe I need to make that phone call and go back to what I was doing. Or maybe I just need to switch it up. It's not every day constant the same thing, change of routine, change of habits, reaching out to someone and having someone to talk to when you do feel like that is key, because often we can go to social media and drown in that whole digital endless rabbit hole.
Trendy, what's popular,
and then that also makes you feel like worse, because the distractions and the constant it's just ongoing, and then your mind doesn't rest. So it's having that balance and the healthy mechanisms to, I suppose, put a pause or a lid on it and then go back to, what, I'm good. And I think when I have hung out with people that literally have drained my energy, I drive home and I'm like, that's why I should have been home today, because I've done this whole and now this person chat off my ear and I'm just like, okay. And that's not to say I'm not a good listener and I don't want to listen. I do, but it's about who is giving you energy and who's draining the energy. Do you know what I mean? And then having the boundary and setting the constraints on how much time you spend with them, or even what you discuss with them, because sometimes you've got this great idea, this great thing, you go shouting, and I've done this in relationships as well. You're shouting off, "Oh my God, I want to do this," and the partner's just like, okay. And because I've put so much emphasis on what that person's liked in this relationship, and it's this and it's that, and my boyfriend, and then you just get deflated. So having that awareness is key, so that you can balance it and just know, okay, that's not for me anymore. That's not what I'm looking for, and it's okay to be alone. And sometimes in solitude, solitude is fantastic.
Yeah, I always encourage my clients to remember, whether they're single or not. I just think it's so easy for us to forget how awesome we are, how amazing we are as individuals, and that we don't have to seek solace and validation in the arms of somebody else. We have to be comfortable with who we are and where we are. And if I was to give any advice today, it would be people's opinions don't dictate your life, and you don't need anyone to make you happy. You need to get to a point where you actually can be happy with yourself, and it doesn't matter what society says, actually. What's
Well, the
in
more that you like being alone is the more that somebody else can enjoy you as well.
Right.
I mean, what are some of the things that you do or you practice to love on yourself?
I think the biggest thing for me is my time. So if I'm not careful, I'm very giving of myself to people. You know, I'll make myself available. I'll be on the phone. I'll listen to whoever. So I'm really consciously carving out time in my day, in my week, in my month, where it's for me. So I'm very conscious now that I'm not just going to be listening to someone or people for 10, 12 hours of the day. This is not actually good for me, you know, and especially in the capacity of a coach, I feel I have to set boundaries because this is my job. I have to know the difference between my work and a friendship. And when the two cross, this can be problematic. Yeah. So my self-love is taking the time to know that, okay, you need to take time, Marcia, for you and not to feel guilty about that. And that's something I used to really, really struggle with. I still do to a point, because, you know, people who are used to me being available all the time don't necessarily like when I'm not.
Yeah.
So,
having that balance.
Right. What about yourself?
I think there's things like I really like dressing up and just having those days where you go all out, not for any particular reason, but you know, you could have a meeting, I could be doing reels that day, obviously doing the podcast and stuff. But there are some days that I just like dressing up because, and I've actually gone just to meet a friend and hang out for a casual lunch, which we always used to do every week. And people say, "So where are you going?" I'm out of my house. What do you mean, where am I going? Or even if I am staying home and they've come to my house, and it's kind of like, well, where are you going? I think part of my self-love is just dressing up when I feel like it and dressing down when I feel like it. In fact, I'm regularly cold. And so whenever I feel cold, just warming up, I know that sounds really random, but wearing the clothes that make me feel comfortable and not dressing a certain way because I feel like I have to appease, which I used to. Right. Exactly. I used to feel like I've got to wear this and I've got to wear that. And then you wear the most uncomfortable shoes or the most uncomfortable whatever it is to appease a certain situation. And now I'm just like, I don't want to. So as small as that may seem, I think that's probably been one of my things that I do a lot more of now than I used to. And going to bed early and doing my own morning routine. Every morning I have a mindfulness routine that I do before speaking to anyone. So I don't accept phone calls, emails, social media, none of that. I have my morning routine, which consists of meditation. I go through 1 or 2 readings, and then I journal. So that's about a 15-20 minute practice. But again, I started that as a habitual small thing, sort of 2 to 3 minutes. It's kind of gradually gotten to about 20 minutes to half an hour. And typically I don't speak to anyone before that. So it has been challenging when I'm not staying at home and I'm at someone else's house, because then of course you wake up and it's like morning. But I do try as best as possible to give myself that time in that little cocoon. And obviously going to bed early enough is also part of that, because if you're waking up way later than you normally would because you've had a late night for whatever reason, good or bad, I tend to find that my mornings get a bit out of control, and then you're scrambling to kind of get to that meeting or to do that thing and whatever. But if I go to bed on time, I have the sleep that I need, and then I wake up rested. I do that cocoon time, and then the rest of the day I can dissect it with the rest of the world.
Yes, girl.
Yes.
Yeah. So is there anything you would like to leave our listeners with today, Kai, in regards to, is self-love selfish, and everything that we've discussed today?
Self-love is definitely not selfish. If there is anyone telling you that or making you feel a certain type of way, then gracefully decline that opinion. Um, it's a way of self-survival. It is a way to give to yourself and be the best version of yourself, and then give to everybody else. If you're rested and you're in alignment, then the sky is the limit, as they say. You can give the best version of yourself to everyone else, your family, your colleagues, your friends, and if you need to pause, then say so, because that is a form of self love as well. So it's definitely not selfish or vain, and the more you do it, the more everybody around you benefits as well. How about you? What would you like to leave the
I'm
listeners
actually
with?
going to say it is selfish, but because I don't see selfish as a negative thing. I think being selfish is necessary. And I think we've kind of been conditioned that the word selfish is, it means you're bad and you're only thinking about you. Yeah, well, actually, that is true. I am. And I'm okay with that. And so just to kind of be a bit of devil's advocate, it's okay to be comfortable with being selfish, because for all the reasons you've just said, we need to love self, because we're no
Mm,
good to anyone if we don't even give that care and attention that we give to everyone else to ourselves. So on that note,
absolutely.
men, women, celebrate your awesomeness. Today, do something for you and don't feel guilty about it.
Absolutely. I think I'd like to leave a little challenge. If you are listening or watching and you don't practice anything in the morning, or you find that so much of your day is given to others, take 5 minutes. There's 5 minutes in the morning or the evening that you do something just for you. It could be meditation, it could be prayer, it could be journaling, but just take 5 minutes that's uninterrupted and let us know how you get on. We think you'll love it. So,
We think
yes.
you're awesome.
We really thank you for watching and listening. And yeah, if this has resonated with you or somebody that you know needs to hear it, then please do share, leave a comment, like, and subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. And as always, it's good to talk. So we hope to see you in the next episode, and take care. Have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.
Proudly sponsored by Bee Beads. Be different, handmade with love.